At the start of the summer, I had several conversations with my best friend about how the summer felt like a fresh start. School was very fulfilling for me, except by the way of social experience that I had been craving. There were only a couple of people from the school year I had really wanted to keep around, and besides that, there were other people exiting my life in the form of friendships and relationships, and it felt like a period of exodus that was subsequently filled with new relationships forming, as well as reconnecting with people that I already knew. Benjamin brought a few of his friends around more for us to play games with. I spent a few days out of state and reconnected with one of my cousins I'm now speaking to more, and generally, I found my life being filled with people I could count on more for more positive interactions in the day-to-day. It's not the perfect analogy, but a lesson that I learned at the beginning of the summer is that it's okay to lose touch with people, and I'm only human, you know? Not everyone I've ever known is going to be a part of my life forever, and I don't even particularly want the opposite of that to be true. And even if it is bittersweet to know that I'm going to be apart from someone today, I can find comfort in knowing that new experiences await and not everything is meant for me. At the beginning of the series, I spoke a lot about how I had collected games for so long and that I had a lot of games that I wanted to play. I can confidently tell you that these are not those games. And you know what? There is classics in here. I've never purchased a game without a base level knowledge or intrigue with it, and minus some childhood gifts in the pile, there isn't a single game in here that I haven't wanted to play, experience, or know more about in some way, shape, or form at one time or another. But honestly, even if I gave it my all to get through just this stack of games, it'd still take me years. And I'm not interested in doing something that I'm not loving just for some claim to the larger games industry as a whole, whether that's through knowledge or experience. Not everything is meant for me, and I can live with that.
I honestly couldn't tell you what I'm doing possessing some of these games. Like Sonic, for instance. I've never cared much for Sonic the Hedgehog. I forced myself to play the original 3.5 games with the Sonic Mega Collection here quite a while ago. But that was just so that I knew some of the retro titles. They never really hooked me, and I sort of played them so I could get to Sonic Mania. And Sonic Mania was probably the best that the 2D titles had to offer, other than Sonic 3 and Knuckles. I really liked that one as well. But by the time that I got to Sonic Mania, I just wasn't very interested in it anymore and couldn't get myself to get through the rest of them. I'd say they're still worth checking out, though, as they're quality games, and you can get them for pretty cheap or free, depending on the method that you use. What I couldn't tell you is why I have the rest of these games. I wasn't that big of a fan of the 2D Sonic games, and I've heard a lot of mixed reviews about the 3D titles, so why would I put my time into these games that I am not that invested in? Or why would I put my money into them? I don't know. I ended up trying some of the Rush-style 3D games based off of a recommendation from a friend, and that meant Sonic Generations and Sonic Colors, and I didn't like them all that much. I also tried Unleashed at some point, I think, which I also didn't like, and so naturally, I ended up buying Sonic Frontiers on PC. Who knows why? I genuinely cannot tell you what possessed me to continue to try to dive into this franchise. It's simply not for me. This is a prime example of time wasted on something that I don't really have much passion for, and that's exactly what I'm trying to cut out of my collection right now. Assassin's Creed is a series that I can give a little bit more credit to. The first game was one that I watched my dad play a little bit when I was a kid, and I was really intrigued by it just because of the coolness factor of it with the parkour and the action. One day, not long after I'd gotten my Switch, the remaster of the third game was on sale, and I put a good few hours into it, but I wanted to play the series from the beginning to know the whole story, even though I'm pretty sure it's not like a sequential thing like that. But I ended up getting my hands on the entire first trilogy, anyways, and ended up trying the first one. And I wasn't aware of the whole like time traveling nature of the series, and that sort of got me into it. But I played a couple hours, and it was honestly just a lot more clunky and not as well paced as I wanted it to be, and it didn't keep me hooked after that. I've heard good things about some of the recent entries, which is shocking because the Assassin's Creed series was like the main punching bag for people referring to shitty yearly releases for years. But if I ever want to get back into the series, I'll probably just play one of those rather than one of the older ones. This is the PSP Assassin's Creed title. I believe it's called Bloodlines. And I'm aware that it's like different than the console releases, but I had already played Assassin's Creed 1 and decided I didn't like it by the time that I bought that, and so it was kind of just another example of buying something for no real reason. And I don't feel like trying it out just to not be all that interested in again, so I don't mind parting with it.
These games are a bit different than most others on the list. As for the two Resident Evil games here in the front, I have just never been that much of a fan of horror as a genre, and so I don't have a great desire to play them. Then there's the true crime games, Streets of LA and New York City. I've actually heard pretty good things about these ones, but they are sort of GTA adjacent to what I've been able to collect on the internet. And I've never been all that interested in GTA, and so I don't really care to play them either. And then the last one is ATV Off-Road Fury 2, which I played a little bit as a kid, but I don't really have very strong opinions about it, and it wasn't something that I came back to, and I don't see myself ever coming back to it again. So I don't mind letting it go. But these 5 games were grouped together because they were actually games that have been on the shelf since I first started looking at the shelf of video games that my family owned when I was like 4 years old. And in talking to my dad about whether or not it is okay to get rid of them, he actually let me know that the PS2 along with those games was something that he got from his best friend, who has recently passed. That sort of recontextualized the way that I look at them on my shelf, and even retroactively for the entirety of the time that they've been in my possession. My dad said that they were fine to get rid of, but I sort of hesitated once I knew where they came from. I'll probably never know if they were a gift or a purchase between friends, but I see them as sort of representative of that friendship that I idolized as a kid and I looked up to. And I think, though it probably wasn't intentional or even really recognized all that much as a kid, that it was crucial for me to see the two of them and have a role model of what friendships should be. And I think that did contextualize what I expect from friendships even in my adult life. And I'm really grateful to my dad and his friend for that model. When I was talking to my dad about it, I made plans with him to play some of the other games that I have sat on that shelf for my entire life as soon as we get our hands on 2 fully functioning PS2 controllers. Notably, those are not the only games left from the sharing of the PS2 from my dad and his best friend. And I will be thinking about that as I force my dad to cruise the streets of Springfield in The Simpsons Road Rage with me, or when he inevitably whoops my ass in Street Fighter. If I'm remembering him right, I can imagine my dad's best friend with a pretty big grin on his face as he tells me he doesn't really give a damn what I do with these games, and so I'm okay sending them away for now. But honestly, thinking about them in this new way has sort of recontextualized a lot of my collection, because it's pretty much fully made up of secondhand games. And I hope that someone can end up enjoying these ones more someday, but I have a greater appreciation for all of the stories that I don't know that are probably behind all of the games that I own.
These are easily the most divisive games that I'm getting rid of. I've tried playing Dark Souls and I've tried playing Elden Ring, but it's really just not my piece of cake. I think there's critique to be made for the series as a whole, but it's probably the most glazed series of video games of all time, and I'm not the one that's in the position to critique or evaluate them because I haven't played them all that much. The only valid thing I have to say is every time that I've tried getting into one of these games, it's felt in the first couple of hours that I've dealt with them that I'm fighting the controls or like the handling more than I'm fighting the enemies, and I don't really mess with that. I know that's a skill issue, and I know the people that love these games love them because of the reward that is learning the controls, but it's just not something I prefer, and it's felt so non-responsive at times. I don't need to pretend that I care about these games anymore, so they don't have to be in my library. These Super Monkey Ball titles are easily the games that I'm the most bitter about in my collection. I've always loved the idea of Super Monkey Ball, and the sort of gimmick of moving the stage rather than the character in a platformer is a really cool one, I think. And typically this is like the exact kind of arcadey fun that I would love. I got these both around the same time, and then when I popped in the disc for Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania, within the first couple levels, I realized that up in the corner there's a counter for how many bananas you can get in each level. And it's written as a total of the number of bananas available. And in some of the levels, it is not physically possible. I've tried it so many different times and I've looked up different playthroughs. It is not physically possible to collect all of the bananas in one singular level on one run. And it's not like it carries over between runs and you just have to get them all eventually. I wouldn't mind it if it was just like a counter that counted up for how many coins or bananas that you got. But why the fuck would you tell me that there's 150 bananas in the level to collect if I can't collect all 150 bananas? I despised that design decision so much that after only playing a few levels of this stupid baby game, I never put it back into my Xbox again, and I am so glad to be getting rid of them. Letting these games go is allowing me to let go of a bit of a hatred that I would otherwise be holding on to if they stuck around. This is a stack of games that, despite never really having any interest in, I ended up owning due to childhood gifts for the most part. Not all of them are write-offs. There's some decent ones in here, but like there's Cooking Mama in this stack, and that game sort of single-handedly created my hatred for the motion controls present on the Wii. And then Epic Mickey was like an okay game that I played a little bit as a kid, but honestly I don't have much reason to ever go back to it, and the rest of them are just sort of games that I would have a much better alternative to if I decided that I wanted to play them with someone ever again, and so I don't have much reason to keep them around. The rest of the games can kind of just be sorted into categories pertaining to not really want to keep them around. This is the I played it or something adjacent to it and thought I'd like it, but I really just don't give a damn pile. And then these are a few that I just kind of generally lost interest in without much interaction at all.
These games are sort of the I don't really care to play them most of the time, and if I do, I have better ways to do so pile. Like Dead Cells, Terraria, Stardew Valley, Need for Speed. I have these on PC or another platform. I don't need these still. Then Gran Turismo for the PSP, Grid Legends, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. I have the originals of these on other platforms. And then Luigi's Mansion and Soul Calibur. If I ever really want to play Luigi's Mansion, I will just pirate it for the 3DS. And Soul Calibur 2, I'm not going to get any more than 15 minutes out of that game if I ever pop it into the console. And I have the Dolphin emulator anyways, so. The last ones here are just Pokemon titles. I wish I loved these games because I love Pokemon and I love them conceptually, but they're just kind of a slog. I straight up didn't like these two, and if I ever want to play Pokemon again, I have a DS and I have a 3DS, and I have super legal means to go play the good ones rather than the more recent slower ones that they've released. I don't know if I've missed anything, but if I did, it probably wasn't all that important. But we're here, and I'm about to part with all of these games. I got home late last night after selling everything, and I ended up wasting time waiting for a call back about it instead of tidying my games up again. So this morning, as I reorganized, I started thinking about some of the games I didn't sell. A few of the games I sold were duplicates, but there's 5 different copies of Portal 2 here. Why? Because it's funny. I think I accidentally bought 2 around the time I decided I wanted a physical copy of my favorite game ever, and I've just kept buying them. I'll try to not get too many to where it seems like I'm hoarding them, but I like having a few spares on my shelf, even if I don't own a PS3, or a 360 for that matter. Along the line of games I didn't love all that much to continue playing, here's the Metroid Prime trilogy. I played the remaster, and that one's on the shelf over there too, but honestly, I did not like it. It's a very sluggish game, the combat sucks, the traversal sucks, the world design is subpar. I truly don't know why this game gets all the praise it does. Once I finished that one, I thought maybe I'd like the next one, but I couldn't force myself to play more. Prime 2 sucked as well. I'm not going to force myself to play 3, but I love Metroid, and I can't force myself to get rid of these games I tried so hard to find. I now own 5 different Call of Duty games. I didn't grow up playing COD, but I've probably played no more than 5 times in my life with friends or family at their places. But I've heard really good things about the Wii Call of Duty games, even better things about Black Ops 2 on Wii U, and I really want to learn to play shooters competently on a controller. So despite not caring much for them, I think they have the capacity to be fun social experiences and good tools for learning. That might be the first time anyone has ever said that. Notably, not a single handheld game from Nintendo made it off the shelf. Despite having some duplicates or cross-console titles here, handheld games have a special place in my heart. I think if I ended up selling most of my games, they'd probably be the last to go. There's something about actual portable handheld consoles that fostered some of my favorite design patterns with shorter bite-sized play loops and art that is masterfully created and sits perfectly on their respective consoles. I adore these platforms and everything that they have to offer. And the rest, well, they're either important to me or I do truly want to try to play them. Maybe that means actually getting an Xbox 360 again so I can play my favorite racing game, Grid. Maybe it means finding a new controller for the PS2 so I can get my ass beat by my dad in Street Fighter. Maybe it means finally finishing some games I already know I love, like Plants vs. Zombies, Mirror's Edge, Mega Man ZX, or Xenoblade. But I've been filling my time doing so many other fun things, like getting back into the finals, playing Minecraft with my boyfriend, and now starting school again. I've been debating whether or not to make this video a part of the Hif Whip series, or if that series even gets continued at all. Obviously, I haven't been doing the videos weekly, and I'm not going to be committing to continuing to do them weekly or otherwise through the school year and starting work again. And the original goal of the project was simply to fill the time that I had when school and work weren't in session. But the summer and the Hif Whip project as a whole has taught me a lot, and it feels like it's finally all come to a head. I have a lot more to say than just how I feel about what I played. That obviously has meant things like talking about other ways that I'm spending my time, but also talking about ethical and political considerations, about sending my money, and the other things I spend my time doing with people as well. I'm not an expert on anything that I really talk about, but I think it's important to give conscious thought to nearly everything, and it's been a great experience to write and then speak about the thoughts that I have about anything that I do. I love being analytical, and that's why I did this at the end of the day. Not because I want to justify my time spent or because I necessarily want people to listen to the things that I have to say, but because I find it rewarding to simply have things to say. And it's a bonus to have people interact with it or see it because I get to hear what they get to say, and sometimes I get to say a little bit more after that. Shout out to Silver186575. If you're still watching, I love being able to meet a stranger and share a simple exchange over a mutual interest. I will have more to say, I do even right now, but I'll leave it at that. Just like not everyone and not every game is for me, I only have so much time in my life that I can dedicate to this, and that's okay. Expect to see me again sometime, but until then, thanks for watching. Not next week, but I will see you again sometime.